What's going on? It is Friday. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Welcome to the pre-weekend party. As always, it's the 5 things we're watching on Saturday. Coming up tomorrow, Penn State and Northwestern. Hope you're having a great Friday. Got a roll call going on in the chat already from some of our regulars. Thank you to everybody who shows up and hangs out with me on Fridays because, again, you are my co-host today. We're talking in the chat. I've got some stuff to talk about, but if you got questions, things you want to know about Northwestern, the matchup, the Penn State football team through the first 4 games, all that's fair game. Or, maybe some other things. Whatever's on, maybe not whatever's on your mind, but, most things are open. Steven says, good morning from a rain-soaked Massachusetts, raining here in Happy Valley just a little bit. Kevin checking in from cloudy, humid Florida. Kevin, is there any other type of Florida? That's an honest question, but also from my understanding, no, there is not a different type of Florida. So if you guys want to throw in where you're watching from today, like Ronald, also from Tampa, Florida, we are having, we got a lot of Florida people in the chat. A lot of people watching the show. Love that. We are not just international, got people watching from all over the world, but also all over America. Lots of people in Pennsylvania, but also Florida. We've got people from the West Coast as well. So, talking about Penn State football versus Northwestern today. 5 things that we're going to watch for, and the first thing we're going to get to right off the bat, we're going to be hearing from Jame Franklin pretty quick.
Number 5.
So this is something that I've been following and kind of paying attention to from a perspective of what are the trends in college football. And I'll be honest, I phrased my question incorrectly to Jame Franklin, was not specific enough, but ultimately, because he, knows football, got to the answer that I think he thought I was trying to ask in the question. This is what he had to say when I asked him, are teams playing more two-high defenses? And for those that don't know, two-high is 2 safeties playing at least 10 yards deep. That includes to position like cover 2, cover 4, cover 6, any combination of 2 safeties deep plus another defender in the secondary or maybe more. And the answer is yes and no. And it's a very interesting answer.
There's people that do a little bit of both. But yeah, I haven't sensed or felt like there's more people playing with 2 safeties this year than in years past. And then obviously there's a big difference between 2 safeties with a cover 2 philosophy, 2 safeties with a quarter half philosophy, and then 2 safeties that are playing quarters. Because really quarters you could really put into a totally different family, because it's a way to play middle of the field open, but really technically have 9 guys in the box.
So let's clean up a couple of things there from Jame Franklin. When he says middle of the field open, there are 2 different ways that football players, quarterbacks, look at the coverage shell. You ever hear somebody say the coverage shell? It's talking about where the safeties and the corners are aligned pre and post snap. So if you've got 2 safeties deep, you have an open middle of the field. They're splitting the field either in half or in the quarters or in some combination thereof. And then there's closed middle of the field, which is a single deep safety, and that can be cover 3, cover 1. Primarily, those are the closed middle of the field. Now, there's some other variants of that you can get into, but we're not going to get into that. The point is, Penn State has seen a lot of these quarters defenses this year, and this is what I think is my question was, is this proliferating through college? Is this the answer now to spread offenses to have your cake and eat it too? Because he mentioned playing the run and the pass from quarters. And we previewed this all the way back before the season started with the game against Northwestern. So Penn State has seen a lot of quarters so far this season in terms of this is kind of a theme. Not necessarily these teams have played a lot. Iowa played a good amount, West Virginia played some, Delaware played some, and Northwestern primarily bases their defense out of this quarters system. So it's really, this is what I'm thinking in terms of limiting explosive plays, keeping players in the box. It's this particular style of defense that Penn State has seen quite a bit this year. And there's been different results. West Virginia, super explosive. They get a 72-yard touchdown against this particular style of defense because of a couple of play-action passes and the I think, the first play and the first pass of Drew Allar's career, 72-yard touchdown. So explosive one game. Then against Iowa, 8 completions, 61 yards, much more methodical. And that's what cover 4 is trying to do. Keep a lid on these explosive plays. So that's in this game. What are we getting? Are we getting West Virginia attack style, or are we getting Iowa attack style? Because the plan of attack was different in both times. Yes, Penn State took a couple of shots. They tried a couple of double moves on this soft Iowa coverage shell. That didn't happen. That didn't happen in the game. They weren't able to get those. Against West Virginia, not as disciplined of a defense right out of the box. They were able to get some of those explosive plays. So, and then Delaware, if you look at it from a rushing perspective, that's the other half of this. So explosive plays and cover 4, it's trying to limit everything. Is in a certain sense. It's an interesting situation where you can also create a lot of explosive plays because teams will also attack downfield against this quite a bit. So it encourages explosive plays, and it also tries to limit them. When Delaware ran these coverages, Penn State ran the ball on them and made them pay for not keeping an extra player in the box. Iowa, not so much. Once again, 3.9 yards per carry against Iowa. So how does this go? And I think this also comes down to the personnel that you play in this game. And this is, I think, one of the disadvantages of 12 personnel. Now, if you're good enough and you can scheme open big throws, it doesn't really matter because Penn State has used 12 personnel to generate some explosive plays against West Virginia. But if you put 12 personnel on the field, 2 tight ends, condense the field, that brings the safeties down in the box because the way that this system works, for the most part, and from what we're talking about here specifically, is the deep defenders have a player they're covering, they're shading. It's not exactly one-on-one coverage, but it can be. So if you got 12 personnel on the field, you're bringing both safeties down in the box. And if you run out of that situation, you're inviting more players into the box. If you spread the ball and run, that gives you the opportunity for some bigger plays. And that's what Minnesota did last week. Minnesota, who plays with 6 offensive linemen as a base personnel in some years, they spread the ball out, 3 receivers, 4 receiver sets, and then tried to run the ball from this spread formation because Northwestern, against Minnesota, had a lot of linebackers on the field. So that's going to be something interesting to see how Penn State attacks because they can theoretically play either of those things, 3 receivers or 2 tight ends. That's the whole conversation that we've been having throughout the summer and then into this particular game 5 weeks into the season. Penn State has not, talking about ways to win, this is something Jame Franklin's talked about quite a bit this year, is learning to win different ways. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but they have not proven as much that they can win and be hyper-effective with 3 receivers on the field. That has been a work in progress. So, what do they feel most comfortable with going into this game? Certain games, we have a great feel. Like I would say against Iowa last week, we had a great feel about the offense specifically and how they were kind of doomed from the start. This is a more ambiguous thing of what does Penn State want to do, because they can do multiple things against this particular team. Before we get on to number 4, I got to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is Caldera Labs. I've been here for the Friday show. You know the Caldera Labs, they are our sponsor here on the Friday show, and I love these products. Not only do they work, but they're also awesome to use, and the experience is half of life, right? Not just as something effective, but also how does it make you feel, and do you like using it and want to come back and use it time and time again? The only reason I don't use this stuff is because sometimes my mornings are too hectic, and I don't get to using all of these products. But guys, this is the real point here is we've had a conversation about Caldera Labs a couple of times, and some people have said, like, why are you trying to live forever? It's not the point here. The point is not to live forever just yet. Science is working on it, and I'm excited for the future of that. But it's about extending your prime. You don't want to be a running back. You don't want to be used up by 28 years old. You want to be Tom Brady. You want to be on into your 40s, looking and playing like you're in your 30s. And when you're in your 30s, like your 20s. And that's what Caldera Labs can do for you. Their face cream to hydrate your face because your body is mostly made of water. So using the essential nutrients and things that won't dry your skin out in order to hydrate your face and keep your skin elastic, This is basic. Like, women have been doing this for years. So extend your prime. Make sure that you are a third contract sort of guy with Caldera Labs. And use the promo code BWI23 for calderalabs.com to get the 20% off your first order. So 20% off. Just going to say that again. 20% off these super nice premium products that actually work and make you feel cool when you're using them. Calderalabs.com and use the promo code BWI23 for 20% off. Okay, so let's get into number 4.
Number 4.
So we mentioned that Northwestern and this team, there's a couple of different ways that Penn State can play this. And this is where it's an interesting team to watch because they're feisty everywhere. They fight. They have, I think, fundamentally sound, strong football players that if you give them the right environment, and if Penn State gives them the right environment, they can cause headaches for the Nittany Lions. But they're tough, not necessarily good. So here I've outlined some of the guys that I think stand out. Carmine Bastone, the defensive tackle number 90, I think he's their best defensive lineman. He's their 3 technique. He's hard to move. He's good. He's athletic. Northwestern does the things that can cause problems for an offensive line when it comes to slanting into zone pressures and things like that. Najee Story is their 3 technique. Their 1 technique. I think he does a good job. And then Penn State fans will remember the linebackers, Bryce Gallagher, Xander Mueller. Those guys, they're back again. They do their thing. They're not pure box linebackers in terms of like they're only good against the run, but they're mostly. That's what they are. Gallagher has had a rough start to the season. He's missed 10 tackles so far. So that's part of this conversation about this team is that they do some things from a schematic standpoint, from a coverage standpoint. I failed to mention this in the first part, talking about cover 4. That's not the only thing that they run. Jame Franklin talked about it at the beginning of the week. They are multiple, kind of a pro-style defense where they have what they do primarily. But they'll do a lot of different stuff. They'll play cover 3. They'll play cover 1. Against Duke, they roll to 2 high coverages. They have the ability, and I think the safeties to make that happen. But I wouldn't say that this team is necessarily explosively tenacious on defense where they're going to cause a lot of problems. I'd say that the area where that they are most weak, and again, even at corner, they're feisty. They'll fight for the ball. I don't think that these are super talented corners, but they can hang with Big Ten receivers and make them earn each catch. So that's really, to me, how you're looking at this team. Is they're going to try and make you earn every yard, but you can earn every yard. Stephen Light here in the chat, he says, no question, just glad you and the BWI team keep producing great content. Thank you, Stephen. Always appreciate you being here. I believe I met Stephen at the last tailgate show before the Iowa game. Stephen, I did meet you, right? It was very loud. I am always like at 11 when we're doing stuff like that because I'm balancing 6 different things. So I believe we said hi, but that also could have been a fever dream. So I appreciate Stephen. He's always here. He's always somebody who's commenting and donating and being a part of the channel. And we got a lot of people from Florida. Jason says Florida here too. David, here he is. Sunny and a high near 80 in Chicago tomorrow. Nothing like last year in State College. Yeah, that's a big part of this game. Last year, this defense that I explained to you at the top of the show, last year, this is something that I think Penn State tried to take advantage of, this coverage system, but you were playing in a hurricane, and that didn't quite go the same way because the ball was wet. Sean Clifford, totally different offense, by the way, style and ability and different playmaking levels. And that goes back to what we were talking about with this is a tough defense for Northwestern. You can beat them. One of the reasons they had some issues with the run game last week against Minnesota is the same reason that Penn State allowed a 66-yard touchdown to Delaware. It doesn't matter who you're playing. It doesn't matter if you know what's coming. If you don't stay in your gap, you're going to have a problem. And there was a lot of gap leakage from the Northwestern defense. And this cover 4 system, if you're trying to add into the run late from one of those safety positions, you've got to be on your game. Because in certain ways, they kind of fill in the extra linebacker with a safety. that safety, you're now adding secondary players into the run fits. And if they're not Jaquan Brisker or KJ Winston, you might have some problems. And the safeties, I thought, didn't do a great job in terms of being in control and being in their gap. And with the way Minnesota was playing, they were making it so that Northwestern had to make some choices. Are you going to cover the screens and the bubble screens we can do out in the field, or are you going to keep 5-6 guys in the box when we have just one running back in the backfield? And I think Penn State can take advantage of that style of play. From a running perspective, I'm always about spread to run. I think that it provides more opportunities for chaos to not get in the way. On running plays, I think this is something to just stop and say here for a second. Running plays are chaotic. You are trying to do this delicate, intricate, well-choreographed dance as an offensive line. You have to hit your landmarks, but your landmarks are trying to hurt you. Your dance partner is actively trying to fight you. So are you able to do that time and time again? Usually not. Most college offensive line groups and college offensive linemen are not at the NFL level where everyone's really good at the dance. Even the worst players in the NFL are good at run blocking from, a perspective of what you're doing at this level versus the NFL. It's all faster, it's more precise. At the college level, there's more mistakes, there's more mental breaks, and if you just allow a special running back a little more room, so he's not trying to fight two guys in a hole that have broken free of their blockers, you give them the opportunity to create space. And I think that that's a better way to run. So if I'm talking about what I think Penn State should do in this game, what I would do, I would be going spread to run and using some of the themes and the ideas that Minnesota had, but making it your own. And so that you're not just carbon copying everything, because anybody can stop something the second time they've seen it. Well, I should say most people have able to stop that the second time they've seen it. So that's number 4. This is a tough defense. If they keep it, that grind it out for a quarter or two before Penn State adjusts to whatever the wrinkles are this week, I would not be surprised. You want to hope that they can come out and score quickly against this defense, but really that hasn't been the case for most of the offenses so far this year. So let's get on to number 3, because I think that we'll flip the ball and we'll look over at the Penn State side of the defense, Penn State side of the team, and look at the defense for number 3.
Number 3.
So Northwestern doesn't really like to run the football. It's interesting. Cam Porter's a good running back, but that's not really what's going on with this offense. They are a spread offense that wants to throw the football. They're going to rely on that part of their game to move the ball, and they do a lot of stuff around the perimeter to try and run around their offensive line. But that's going to put them in some negative situations. If you're facing the Penn State defense, they can get in the backfield and stop some of that lateral action. You're not outrunning and outflanking this defense very often, which is going to put you in a lot of third and long situations. And this is where I think Penn State showed last week something I'm excited about, and I think most fans are excited about, and that is some of the evolution of the Prowler package. I think this is another good week to use Chop Robinson the way you did last week, which is to say put him in the middle and create pressure up the middle. Because I said Cam Porter's a good running back. He is dreadfully bad. The Northwestern running backs overall are dreadfully bad in pass protection. Mental breaks, physically not good in terms of picking up their assignments and making sure nobody gets through to attack the quarterback, to attack Ben Bryant. And when you've got two guys that can come through the A-gap in Abdul Carter and Chop Robinson, you mug them over the A-gap, and Robinson is athletic enough that he can drop into coverage as well. We've seen him do it a bunch of times this year. Unless you are really good in sliding your pass protection and setting everything up great, one of those guys going through the A-gaps is going to get they're going to get a matchup with a running back at least once or twice, especially considering Northwestern's not great at the tackle position either. Like they need the running backs to chip and their tight ends to chip and help for their tackles too. So for Penn State, we talk about this. If they leave Abdul Carter in the middle and they put all the pressure on the edges, Abdul Carter leads the team through the first 3 weeks with 9 pressures. If you then put the pressure in the middle, Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac on the outside, they explode and they get their pressures that way. So this is a game where you can have your cake and eat it too. You can pressure either way. they really struggle with blitz looks and mugging the A gap. So I just think that if we're looking for what Penn State is going to do, I would be excited and interested to watch that interaction, because I think that can create some of those big time plays that Penn State has been able to do: turnovers, sacks, interceptions, and yeah, pressure through the A gap. Never a bad plan. As much as it's more reliable on the outside from kind of an analytics perspective, you have more pure one-on-one opportunities on the outside. If you can get an Aaron Donald in the middle of your defense to constantly put pressure, straightest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So go over the center, go through the football to get to the football. And I think Penn State can do that in this game, and they can do that from a schematic standpoint, and let's be real, I think they could get pressure with their base package if you have Zane Durant out there and you want to do some of the things you've done before with slanting. And Amin Vanover, I think, has something to say about pressure in between the guards, or at least he's very good coming inside the tackle and using that power through that inside door. And if guys are oversetting, there's just a lot of different ways that Penn State can get pressure in this game. That's going to lead to something later in the show, by the way, so keep that in mind. Pressure in this game is going to be very important, but let's get on to number 2.
Number 2.
Hot take there. Pressure is going to be important in this game, and Penn State's defense is on the field. Very good, T. Frank. Super insightful stuff. Everybody knows that. That's kind of the deal. Okay, so let's get into number 2, which I think is actually number 1. But as always, the thing that I find most interesting is number 1. This is probably the most impactful thing, and I think for Penn State, this is a get-right game on the offensive side of the ball. We talked about the way that this defense is going to try and play Penn State. So it doesn't even have to get complicated. On inside zone runs this year, Northwestern has given up almost 300 yards. So this is not like they're a defense that you have to do certain things against them. Your base offense can work against this team. But if you want to get those explosive runs, the quarterback run game has been a part of a lot of their problems throughout the year, but not even like fully. Like if you look through all of the different ways that they've been attacked: inside zone read option, outside zone, man, like they're tough, but they're not good. They'll fight you, but Penn State, the offensive line should handle this team. This should be a team that, if Penn State's offensive line is what we've said they are, and they were able to lean on Iowa, they should be able to generate explosive running lanes where it's not hard this week. It's been pretty hard on Nick Singleton and Katron Allen in terms of how to get those explosive plays. This should be a week that it should be a little bit easier. Should definitely be easier this week against this team that has, safeties fitting poorly. They're going to give you some stuff if they play the way that they have over the last couple of weeks. Defensive ends not keeping edge contain and trying to knife inside, make a play. Suddenly there's nobody on the outside. Minnesota's running backs run for 10, 9, 15 yards. Penn State, their running backs should do more. And if you do that, if you run on this team, they will drop a safety into the box. Like I said, they're not purely a cover 4 team where they're going to keep those guys deep. If they need to, Duke was a heavy run team, heavy read option team with an athletic quarterback. They wanted to add an extra safety into the box to play underneath coverage and take away the quick passing game. So if they do that against Penn State, that opens up the seams. And that means Theo Johnson has an opportunity for big plays. Keandre Lambert-Smith, Tyler Warren. Basically, the offense can then click on all cylinders if you get them to adjust for what you do in the running game, which is why most offensive coordinators prioritize establishing a good running threat in the game. And that might come in with your personality and your style, which is just the threat of your players creates that. Or if you do have success in a game, that is something that defensive coordinators and football players will adjust to. So I do think that this is a game where Penn State can have it any way they want. That's kind of we're not going to say Penn State win, lose is at all in question here. It's how do they win and trying to understand the different ways that they can and if they will put up those explosive plays. So I think this is a big game for Keandre Lambert-Smith especially because there's different opportunities for different situations. So Let's talk about cover 4 and the way Penn State has attacked cover 4 previously, where they have used their tight ends to move the safeties from the middle of the football field and then create explosive plays. As you can see with my hand gestures here, if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see I'm making a post route with my hand. It's super technical here on screen. They use the safeties. They use the safeties against the defense. I love the way that you can manipulate safeties in this quarter's defense because it opens up big plays. It opens up the opportunity for those if you have a receiver that's fast enough to cross the face of their defender and an offensive line that is good enough to block and pass protection. Northwestern doesn't have any defensive ends that have true pass rushing potential, like to threaten Penn State. I don't see that on film. If Penn State has a bad day, anyone can create pressure and create problems. But Drew Aller should have the time, and Keandre Lambert-Smith should have the speed to get open deep, especially if they play in certain specific ways. So, to me, Drew Aller has been very comfortable at taking these plays and going to the receivers quite a bit. Now, if Penn State is dialing up more shots, that's what's going to happen in this game. If they want to play it conservative, he can always find the soft spot in the zone because playing off coverage, playing these cover 4 systems, Northwestern doesn't play a lot of aggressiveness all the time with their corners to try and take away some of those easy throws. So, is this a dink and dunk of 15 yards? That could be a reality, but I think if it's Jame Franklin talked about we need to learn to be explosive and win that way, this is a game where there's a lot of different ways they can be explosive. So, he's talked about balance being we can beat you anyway. They have shown, but not consistently, they can get those big passing plays and get those big running plays. This is the game. It's got to be stat game, I think. And for me, if they come out of this game and they're not able to generate at least 1 or 2 explosive plays in the run the pass game, I probably come on the post game show and say, hey, that's a sign of now we're getting to know what this offense is and Drew Aller, and maybe this is not the team that is going to get you chunk yardage for whatever reason, even though they have the potential. They have the athletes to make that happen. Okay, so let's get to number 1. Even though we've kind of wrapped up the game, number 1, I don't think he's going to have a major effect, but it's going to be super fun to watch.
Number 1.
We're going with Ben Bryant, the quarterback for Northwestern. These are just some of the stats that kind of illustrate the point here. 38.2% completion percentage when blitzed. He's bad under pressure. When you keep him clean, he's not bad. He's a good quarterback that can see the field. He can hit his targets. 5 touchdowns when not blitzed. 600 yards, 67.3% completion percentage. So if Penn State is not playing up to their level, if they are not playing with the intensity and the focus that they normally do in the secondary, this is a quarterback that can find soft spots in cover 3. If he's given the time and opportunity to scan the field, he is a little bit like Drew Aller in that he knows where to go with the football. He's unlike Drew Aller that he does not have the tools to get it there consistently. There's a lot of, ooh, that was ugly. Like, that was the right decision, but that was ugly, and the ball skips at the feet of the receiver, or there's an overthrow, or, he's thrown or something like that. So Ben Bryant is not a quarterback that can beat this team, but he can challenge them. This is a scrappy team. Like, they're going to challenge. I fully expect that they're going to get maybe some chunk plays against the Penn State defense with their receivers, who are good football players. Jame Franklin talked about them. A.J. Henning and Bryce Kurtz are good receivers that I think can attack coverage. They're fast enough. They're athletic enough. Their 3 receivers, by the way, have as many targets each as Keandre Lambert-Smith has to lead the team. So they throw the football a lot. They're all in the high to mid-20s. So they're going to distribute the football. He doesn't lock onto his targets too often. And he's also good at finding that soft corner against off coverage. So if you give him these things, he'll pick apart a defense as best he can when he's not under pressure. There's not pressure in his face from running backs, and when he's not in 3rd and 9, which is a lot of the time. Like this offense, it's a lot of the time. So just do what you've been doing. Be aggressive on the outside, deny the first read, and allow your pass rush to get there, because he's also thrown a lot of James Franklin talked about and didn't exactly say this, turnover-worthy plays with Drew Aller and how he's been good at avoiding even bad decisions. You can force Ben Bryant into some bad decisions. He will throw the ball to the other team. He'll also take a lot of sacks. So, again, we called our shot against Iowa that it was going to be a sack game. This is dealer's choice. You can have sacks or interceptions. You can have both. I don't have a good read of how it's going to go. I tend to think that this team is going to get a lot of sacks in this game. But if Bryant decides he's going to throw the ball and be aggressive, and he's behind quite a bit, so he's having to make some risky throws, I think this is an area where Penn State can get to Northwestern, and they can get to the quarterback and create some mistakes. Here's another interesting stat. Ben Bryant is also super aggressive. So when he's under pressure, he actually throws the ball farther down the field trying to make plays. But his average depth of target, how far he's throwing the ball down the field, despite having so many attempts, is 10 yards downfield. That is super aggressive. It's 6th in the Big Ten. By the way, Drew Aller is last among starting quarterbacks in conservative, safe offense. I expect that to change this week, where they're going to attack further downfield against this team. So that's what I got. If you guys want to have a conversation here at the end of the show, usually we have about 10 minutes or so of questions and stuff like that. Maybe not where you're from, if there's anything you want to talk about as far as the game. Ronald says a QB sneak could end up a 45-yard run. You know, after getting 6 last week, if Drew Aller were actually Josh Allen clone, yeah, you could see him spinning out of it and running for 45 yards. But maybe instead of 6 yards like last week, it'll be 10 yards this week or something like that. Ben says hello to Mr. Abdul Carter. Yeah, this is again, I don't want to repeat myself, but this is a game where it's who's going to get the sack is who gets there first. Is it going to be the edge pressure? Are they going to get clean wins on the outside in those situations? Do they have Chop Robinson? Where's he playing? There's so many things that Northwestern has to decide pregame during the week about how do we play this. And then when Penn State goes out there with their defense, they're going to have to adjust to that on the fly, which could create some pretty bad opportunities for the offense for Northwestern. David also says 42-10 too athletic, too deep. Kevin says 48-10, sticking to it. I think 51. I think I said 51-10. I think Northwestern, if they keep so let's just play this out. Everyone thinks that Penn State's going to put up a lot of points. If the second string defense goes in there, I could see them giving up some points at the end of this game, because this offense, it has life. It has life. It doesn't have life against better opponents, but it does have some life. So maybe 10 is a little too low in this point total for me. I probably would redo it and say 17 or 13, somewhere in the teens. But Penn State should score points, and I wanted to be optimistic. I wanted to be optimistic this week about the point totals, because I think that the opportunity is there, and that's reflective of getting over 50 points in this game. This is from Robert. He says, watch out for Nick this week. Didn't have 3 fumbles last year in this game. Think he might be angry. I think Nick Singleton is angry anyway. He's actually, he's a really low-key guy. You talk to him, he's very quiet. So he's not like a hothead. But you see the intensity when he actually gets a long run and it works out for him. This dude is intense. The way he runs, running through people, he wants so badly to be good at football. And yeah, last year, all of that stuff, that will play a factor in the game. But I think that's actually been a little bit of something that's been working against him. If he could play with a little more freedom, give himself a little bit more not so white-knuckled. It seems a lot of times like he is pretty white-knuckled of I'm gonna be a battering ram, instead of playing with a little more loose freedom. Give himself a little bit of slack. I would like to see that. And then when you're in the open field, go nuts. Be that guy. But, play with that balance of a little bit more loose and a little bit more free, because you appreciate how good he wants to be. You appreciate that. You feel that in him. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a negative at times. And I'm not saying it's even the pressure of his profile as one of these national known names. It's just his internal desire to be great and playing with that freedom to maybe I don't have to do this perfectly. I don't have to read this perfectly and run into the hole exactly the way I should. I can be a little bit more creative. And you know, I don't want to psychoanalyze a dude that I haven't talked to that way, but I already did. So sorry. hopefully it's a little bit close to the truth. Who knows? Average Jack Archery says, keep doing what you're doing, T. Frank. My wife knows after every game, the first thing I'm doing this is logging on to YouTube for the post-game show. Thank you. Appreciate that. And that's a great time for me to segue into join us for the post-game show. Immediately after Penn State Northwestern, we will be on talking about what happened. We'll be giving you maybe this is the game that they get explosive plays. We'll be talking about that and some of the other parts of what happened and how it all played out. It can be a little bit chaotic. So I feel like the last couple weeks I haven't done a great job of what's actually happening in the game. It's just individual play-by-play giving you some insights. But hopefully this game there is more of a theme than they played Iowa and had 97 total plays. Steven says, any red shirts likely to be burned this week? We'll see. Any freshmen not seen much of yet. So Penn State has outlined their green light players in the freshman class. If I have them off the top of my head, it is Tony Rojas, Elliot Washington. I think Zion Tracy is in that group. I apologize if I'm wrong about that. And King Mack. And I think I said Tony Rojas. I think that was 4. Let me go through it again. Tony Rojas for sure. King Mack, Zion Tracy, Elliot Washington. I think those are the 4 guys. So those guys, if they're on special teams, yeah, they're going to burn their red shirt. They'll be in the game if that dictates that they're in the game. We've seen King Mack early in games against Delaware, so we might see more of that. Don't know how that's going to play now that Daquan Hardy is back. But the question is going to be whether or not they get those yellow light guys into the game and some of the red shirt guys and how the game plays out. Who travels with the team is going to be important, so make sure you check that out. That information, bluewhiteillustrated.com. That's going to tell you who has the opportunity to play in the game. And then their totals so far. Who has played, and that's why we track these things again over at bluewhiteillustrated.com so that we know, like, okay, in this game, X has seen the field only in one game against Delaware. So you might see him in this game. Conversely, here's a name that comes to mind, Javen Williams. Are they going to play him? Is he going to be here throughout the season, or are they going to dial back his games? UMass is coming up after the bye, so there's an opportunity to play some of your depth players at home. Those are the decisions that they're making this week right now and, you know, finalizing those preparations for who's going to go to the game because they have other games in mind that they might play. So with the ability to play in the postseason as well, some of these guys might have the opportunity to play later in the year. I'm going to, again, single out Andrew Rappelier. Is he a guy that plays later in the year? If they make a postseason run, they're going to try and save his red shirt and play him in some big games if he's ready late in the year. So these are decisions based on a lot of different variables. So it's not. I wouldn't think that we'll see Jameel Lyons in this game, for example. But I don't know in terms of how those guys, what the plan is for the future, and how they see certain games going late in the year. Like, are they going to be able to blow out Rutgers? What's the state of Michigan State? Those are all going to play into, you know, who plays later in the year. So that's what I got. Appreciate you guys here today on the BWI live show. This is the Friday Five. We do this each week. I'm here giving you 5 thoughts about the game upcoming, what I've seen, how I look at it. So please share with your friends. If you, this is the thing. It's always, I'm fascinated by the buy-in each week because I try to bring the same intensity, the same analysis. Doesn't matter, like 1-0 each week. I want to give you the best I got each week. So I appreciate the people that are here each week keeping the same intensity. Tell your friends, your lazy friends that are like, it's Northwestern. All these games matter. All these little nuggets that we're learning about the team, they absolutely matter. So like this video, share with your friends, and more importantly, go over to bluewhiteillustrated.com because I got some videos on the premium content side of what I've seen, some of the stuff we talked about today. I broke it down on film. And you can see it over at bluewhiteillustrated.com on the message board. I want to make sure that you guys get access to all of the things that we're talking about, all the things we learn, and we do that over at the site. So once again, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Tailgate Show coming up tomorrow at 9 a.m. Myself and Aeneas Hawkins are breaking down the game, talking about some of these themes, what he's seen, what he thinks about this game, and more. Post-game show, etc., etc., etc. I could talk myself out for another 5 minutes, so I'm just going to hit the music. I'll talk to you tomorrow.